Okay, so today we're diving into 6.5. The title here says 6.5 and 6.6. We're only going to do half of it today, guys. So today's really not going to be super long. And what you're going to notice about today is that it's really nothing new. Okay, it's just combining things that we've already learned and solving quadratic equations. So the two different methods on how to solve a quadratic equation. First things first is by factoring, okay? And this is the only way we're going to get to today. And if you notice, we've already covered factoring, right? That's what we've been doing this whole unit. So today's not going to be anything new. The other method that we will be learning next class is going to be over the quadratic formula. Oh no. Who knows? Right, okay. It is a formula. It is one that we have to know. If you look up towards my ceiling, you'll notice I have a ceiling tile with that painted on it. That is the formula, but again, we're not doing that today, so don't freak out. You have seen this before. It was in Algebra 1. For those of you who are coming to me from Algebra 2, you've also seen this, okay? It's going to be a Thursday thing, so just got to introduce it. I just want you to kind of look at it, see what it looks like. We'll dive into that later. So, solving quadratics by factoring. So, steps to solve equations with factoring. First things first. When we are solving with factoring, we must set the equation equal to 0. We've been doing this, right? You cannot start factoring if everything's on opposite sides. Everything needs to be on one side, and 0 needs to be on the other. Okay? The next thing you do is you first always check for a GCF before you start factoring. Yes, always. It's going to save you a lot of time. And then we've got several different methods, which we went over these in our project that we just did, okay? Sometimes we just had a GCF, right? We just had a GCF, right? We didn't have anything else. No other types of factoring, okay? So the very first thing that could happen is just GCF only, okay? What happened if we had 4 terms? Yep, we use what's called grouping. That's the only thing we know how to do with 4 terms, right? So that's our only choice. What about 3 terms? You got it. X method. That's all we know how to do so far is the X method. What do we call a 3-termed polynomial? Trinomial. Cool. Okay, and then whenever I had 2 terms, there were 2 different things that could happen. Okay, if I had 2 terms, actually a couple different things that could happen, but if I had 2 terms and I had both of them as perfect squares and a subtraction sign, what'd you call that? Difference of squares. So that is one of them, difference of squares. Could I have a sum of squares? Nope. Had to be difference of squares, right? Sum did not work with squares. It only works with cubes, which is our last one. Okay, so if we have 2 terms and they're both perfect cubes, we call that difference of cubes, right? Or what? Sum of cubes. We could have either. And that's it, right? That's all we've learned so far. That's all we're doing today, okay? But last but not least, when we have something in factored form set equal to 0, we break it apart and we set each product equal to 0. And we solve to get multiple answers, right? So that's what we're doing today, okay? Get it all to one side with 0 on the side by itself, okay? Factor, and then set your factors equal to 0. That's it. So we'll start off. Example 1 is everything on a side by itself. No, it is not. What do I need to do to make that happen? Subtract the 5, okay? When I subtract that 5 over, does it have any like terms on the left? No, it can't go into x squared or 4x, right? So I just leave it there at the end. Are my exponents in descending order?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's another important thing we have to have. But they are. I look. Do I have a GCF?
No.
How many terms do I got? 3, so I need to x method. At the top of my x, what do I put? 5 or negative 5? Negative 5, because 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. What goes at the bottom? The 4, because that is the middle term, right here, 4. Okay, so what I need, remind me, what's got to happen? What's the point of this x? Two numbers that multiply to the top, add to the bottom. You got it. 5 and negative 1. I agree. 5 times negative 1 is negative 5, and 5 plus negative 1 is positive 4. Good? Okay. One little trick that I have not shown you yet, okay? And the reason I haven't shown it to you is because you can't use it every time, okay? But if your leading coefficient is a 1, which here it is, right? If it's just x squared, that's the same thing as 1x squared, okay? If that is your leading coefficient, you can go ahead and just make these sides your factors. So it would be x plus 5, because that's a positive 5 right there, and x minus 1, because that's a negative 1 right there, equals 0. What would have happened if this was a 3? Would that work? No, that would not work. Why? Because it's not a 1. So the leading coefficient has to be a 1. I'm going to get really, really mad if I see you on tests that leading coefficient is not a 1 and you do this. Okay, I might not even give you any partial credit. Because again, this is a shortcut, but it doesn't work every time. When does it work? When what is 1? Leading coefficient is 1. The very first coefficient in front of the x squared is a 1. Okay, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Cool. So that just saved me a lot of time there. Now I've got my 2 factors, and I got to do what with them? Set them equal to 0. You got it. X plus 5 is 0, and x minus 1 is 0. How do I solve x plus 5 equals 0? Subtract the 5, and x is going to be negative 5. And x minus 1 equals 0. Add the 1, so x is going to be 1. Cool. Oops. So those are my 2 answers, negative 5 and positive 1. Questions on how I did that? No? Okay. Cool. Here's what's happening now. Since again, none of this is really crazy or new, I want you to go ahead, finish the rest of this page. We're going to go over it, and then we're going to play a game. Okay? So, I'm pausing this video. Okay. Number 2. What do I need to do first?
Solve it.
Obviously. How do I solve it?
Minus 4. You have a GCF.
Yep, so I've got to get everything to one side and set equal to 0. Okay, that was in my notes. So we should be using our notes as we go through here. So we need to do what with the 4a? Subtract it, because it's currently positive. So to move it over, I've got to subtract it. 4a squared minus 4a is 0. Raise your hand if you at least made it that far. Cool. Okay? Taught you something today. Now we check for a what? GCF. What is it? 4a. They both have a 4 and they both have an a. When I take that out, the first term, so 4a squared divided by 4a, what's going to be left?
A.
Just a. Keep that subtraction sign, and 4a divided by itself,
1.
just a 1. Is this factored form? Completely factored? So now what?
Break 1 part and 7
Break.
equals 0.
You got it, Nathan. Break it apart. Set it equal to 0. So 4a equals 0, and a minus 1 equals 0. So the very first one, how would I solve that? Divide by 4 on both sides, and a is going to be 0. And the next one? Just add the 1. So a is going to be 1. So here are my two values. That was hard? I hope that wasn't hard. It might have been hard from the get-go, just getting it started. I think that's usually the hardest part. But once we get it started, hopefully we can see where it's going. Okay. Number 3. How do we get this one started? Got to move the 5x squared over, right? Because everything's got to be on one side. So when I move that over, is that a like term with any of those things? No? Why not? Why is x squared not a like term with x to the third and x? Different exponents, right? They can't be like terms. X's go with x's, x squareds go with x squareds, x to the third, and so on. Okay? So, what would I write over here on the left side now? Well, I'd write 0 on the right side. What do I write on the left?
3x cubed minus 5x squared.
Okay. Why did you put the 5x squared in the middle? It has to go in descending order, right? Good. Good deal. Hopefully you saw that.
I didn't even know it was supposed to be that way. It's just like my OCD tells me I have to put it in that order.
Well, good. I like that your OCD tells you to put it in that order. Okay? You have math instincts. It's good, Blaine. It's a good thing to have.
I just like to be organized, but I'm never
You like to be organized?
I'm organized in my own way.
Okay. Cameron, do you have a question? Not right now. Wait till we get done with these. 2 problems. Okay. 3x to the third minus 5x squared minus 8x. GCF. Do we got one?
Yes.
What is it? X. They all have an x in common. When I take out an x, what's left?
3x squared x 5x minus 8 equals 0.
Good. Raise your hand if you made it that far in example 3. Okay. Anybody have a question on how we got that far? Do we all understand why it looks like that? What we did? Cool. Okay, now what is left on the inside? A trinomial, right? What do I do with a trinomial? X method. Okay, so we'll draw an X. What's going to go on the top? Negative 24, because 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. What goes in the middle?
Negative 5x.
Okay. And my two sides. Multiply to negative 24, add to negative 5. Yep. Negative 8 and positive 3. I like it. Awesome. Okay, we're currently factoring this trinomial. Would you agree? That's what we're doing? Okay. So tell me, will that little shortcut I taught you on example 1, will that work for this? No, why not? Yeah, this is a 3 right here. Do we all see that? That's not a 1. So this will not work, and I must do what? Factor by grouping. I gotta group these. So, here's what I do. I keep that first term, 3x squared. My two new middle terms are what? Minus 8x and plus 3x. And I keep my last term, the minus 8. And I still got my GCF out here. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and just take that GCF to the bottom so I know it makes it in my final answer and I don't forget about it. So now I can just worry about grouping this guy. So, group my first two terms together. Plus sign. Next two terms together. Equals 0. 3x squared and negative 8x, what do those have in common?
X.
Just x, and what's going to be left? Cool. 3x minus 8. What do those have a GCF? What do we do when they don't have one? Take out just a 1. Leave it alone. Do my parentheses now match?
Yep.
They sure do. So I'm ready to write my final answer. Well, write my final equation to solve. Keep my GCF out front. That's where I got this x. In parentheses, I have my outsides together. And I rewrite my inside. Set them equal to 0. How many factors do I have? One, 2, 3. So I should have how many answers? 3. Gotta break those apart. So I'm gonna go over here where I got room because I wrote a little big. X is 0, x plus 1 is 0, and 3x minus 8 is 0. Solve them. Tell me what the answers are.
X equals 0, x equals -1.
So 3x minus 8 equals 0. How do you solve that?
Oh, x equals.
What would I do first?
Add
Add the 8 over.
Should be 8 over 3.
So I get 3x equals 8. Then do what? Divide by 3, so it is 8 over 3. Those are my answers. A lot of writing. TJ loves writing.
TJ
He wants to
actually
write an
does love
essay
writing. He has a
over
whole
how to
song.
do this.
Especially in Chinese.
Okay,
Blaine, we don't speak of the
last
Speak
problem
of the document.
of these notes, and then we're going to play a game. A fun game.
Game of what? We're gonna watch Jigsaw. Yeah.
No. What do we do first here?
-1.
Minus the 4. Okay. Is that what you did? Okay. 2 things here that we could do. We could go ahead and start with the x method, right? Or I could look. Do these possibly have a GCF?
Yeah.
What is it, Ryan?
I don't know.
It's 2.
No, I don't think 2 goes into 9.
It's
What did I say, like, towards the beginning of factoring? If my leading coefficient was negative, I could take it out.
You're talking about some crazy stuff right now.
Okay. Did anybody do the x method, factor by grouping, and get 2 answers on this one already? Ashton, you did? Okay. Ashton, I don't want you to erase what you have, okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how if I take that -1 out in the beginning, it makes my problem a little bit simpler, and I get the same answer as you, okay? Because chances are we're going to have the exact same answer if you did it correctly. So we're going to start off. I don't like a negative leading term, so I'm going to take out the negative. So it's just going to make all of those terms opposite signs. So 2r squared minus 9r plus 4 is 0. And I'll just go ahead and put that -1 down here. So it makes it in my final answer. Give me 1 second. So draw my x. What's going on top? 8. 2 times 4 is 8. What's going on bottom? 2 things that multiply to give me 8, add to give me -9. -8, -1. Okay, those are my 2 new middle terms. So I've got 2r squared minus 8r minus 1r and plus 4 is 0. Group my first 2 terms together. Plus sign, next 2 terms together. (2r squared and -8r have what in common? 2r. And I have r minus 4 left. Good. -1r and 4. Well, my first term is negative. I don't like that, so I'm going to pull out a -1 and get r minus 4. Almost done. Keep my GCF out front. Outsides in one set, insides equals 0. I now have 3 factors, set them all equal to 0. Can -1 ever equal 0? Nope, so that's not an answer. Next equation, I need to do what? 2r minus 1 is 0. Plus the 1, and then divide by 2, so r is, okay, and then the next one, r is 4. Ashton, did you get the same thing?
Yeah.
You sure did. Okay.
That one seems more complicated.
It seemed more complicated. I just think taking the negative out in the beginning is helpful. But if you can do it the other way and you prefer that way, totally fine. It especially gets helpful when the numbers get bigger. But whatever you want to do, if you see it in the beginning, take it out. If you don't, keep going. You'll still get the answer. Okay, so that's it. We're going to play a game.